My name is David Hanley, 56 years old, retired lineman, widower, father to no one, stepdad twice over, if you can even call it that. I've spent most of my adult life patching what other men abandoned. Sometimes with a wrench, sometimes with a checkbook, sometimes with a lie that bought everyone 5 more minutes of peace. Carol was supposed to be the soft ending, the late chapter that made the rest of the book worth reading. That's what I told myself. She had this quiet elegance about her, the way she moved, the way she didn't complain. I mistook it for grace. I mistook silence for respect. Her daughter Savannah never bothered to hide the disdain. That part was at least honest. From the first time we met, she looked at me like I was a rusted-out trailer someone had parked on her lawn. Her fiancé was even worse. Some 30-something with a permanent smirk and the kind of handshake that's limp on purpose, like he's saving his strength for more important people. I smiled through it all, paid for their brunches, let them talk down to me in my own truck, offered to help with their down payment when they started looking at houses. Never heard a thank you. Not once. The wedding was Carol's idea. She wanted it elegant but intimate. No fanfare, just the family that mattered. That phrase clanged in my ear even then. I should have listened to that ring. The boutique was tucked away in one of those strip malls that tries to look expensive. Frosted glass, clean signage, overpriced water bottles at the counter. I come alone for the final fitting. I like doing things that way. Quiet, efficient. I'm not the kind of man who needs an entourage to put on a jacket. The tailor was an older gentleman, bent with time, hands shaking slightly as he adjusted the shoulders of my coat. He asked me to step into the fitting room to check the taper of the pants. I went in. He closed the door behind me, said he'd be back in a minute. Then the bolt slid shut. I rattled the handle. "Excuse me?" No answer. I waited a minute, maybe 2. Then a voice, thin, nervous, filtered in from the other side of the door. "Just stay in there, sir. Don't come out, please." Something in his tone. Not urgency. Not fear, just compliance. Like he'd been told what to do and didn't want trouble. And then I heard it. Through the cheap plaster wall, muffled but unmistakable, Carol's voice. "He's just dead weight," she said. "I'm tired of pretending." That sentence didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded lived in, practiced, like something she'd been saying to herself for months, maybe years. A truth worn smooth from handling. Savannah answered immediately, her voice sharper, colder. "He's not even family. I don't get why she's dragging him along." A man chuckled, low, casual. Her fiancé. "Relax. He won't do anything." I stood there, the suit stiff against my skin, the overhead light buzzing like it was mocking me. My hands hung useless at my sides. My throat tightened, but I didn't make a sound. Just reached into my jacket. Pulled out my phone. Hit record. Not out of rage. Not fear. Something colder. Like flipping a switch in your brain when the power goes out. You don't scream. You don't panic. You just reach for the flashlight and start cataloging the damage. I don't know how long I stood there. Time collapsed into itself. 10 minutes could have passed. Or 1. Doesn't matter. All I remember is the sensation of standing on a wire that had just snapped at both ends. I wasn't suspended. I was falling, and they were already gone. I heard footsteps eventually, the tailor's voice softer now. "Sir, you can come out now. Sorry about the wait." The lock clicked open. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I walked out like nothing happened. Smiled, nodded, let him adjust my cufflinks, complimented the stitching, paid in cash and tipped 20%. I wore that suit to the wedding an hour later. Stood at the altar, looked Carol in the eye as she took my hand. She smiled like she always did, polite, effortless, unreadable. Savannah sat in the front row, arms crossed. Her fiancé beside her, chewing gum during the vows. I noticed. I remembered. I said, "I do." Because men like me don't ruin things. We finish what we start, even if it's already broken. I watched them all that night. Every movement. Every glance. Carol overplayed the affection, grabbing my arm too often, kissing my cheek like it meant something. Savannah kept staring, not at me, but at my left pocket. The one where the phone had been. The one where the recording still lived. Something had shifted. I could feel it, like being in a house where the plumbing's gone bad and the air smells just a little off. Not enough to evacuate, just enough to notice, just enough to start wondering how long you've been living with the rot. We got back home late. She fell asleep fast. I didn't. I sat in the kitchen with a glass of scotch and my laptop open in front of me, just staring. I opened the banking app, scrolled through the accounts I'd linked to joint access 6 months ago. The pension deposits, the retirement funds, my savings from the job I'd worked 35 years, through ice storms, power outages, broken ribs, and hospital visits. Every dime I'd scraped into a future I thought we'd share. Then I saw it. A routing number I didn't recognize. A name I'd never authorized. It had been changed. Not once. Repeatedly. Subtly. Enough to slide under my radar. 6 months ago. About the time Carol had handed me a stack of forms one night after dinner, told me they were for insurance purposes. I'd signed without reading. Tired. Full. Trusting. That's when the bleeding started. And I hadn't even noticed. I wasn't planning to make a scene. That was never the plan. I grew up in a house where men didn't raise their voices unless something was on fire, where dignity meant swallowing the blade and smiling through the blood. That's how I was built. Quiet, durable, replaceable. But that day something shifted. The moment I heard my name outside that fitting room, the sound of it stripped bare, tossed between them like an inconvenience, I knew I had crossed into something else. They didn't think I'd hear it. Or maybe they did. Maybe they wanted me to. Is David still locked up? Savannah said, her voice just loud enough. We don't need him crashing this. That was it. That was the sentence that cut the last rope. The mask dropped. The performance ended. I stood there in the fitting room, hands still wrapped around my phone, the recording still running. Not rage. Not sorrow. Just silence. Like the eye of a storm that had been circling for years, now sitting directly above me. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. I stopped the recording, slipped the phone back into my pocket, knocked once on the door. Lightly. No answer. Then the shuffle of feet. A delay. A pause. The door creaked open. The tailor looked at me like he expected an explosion. But I just smiled, nodded, walked out into the hall like nothing had happened. Adjusted my cufflinks, smoothed my hair, thanked him politely, because dignity isn't loud. It's sharp, and it waits. The wedding went on. Carol stood beside me, beaming. Savannah smiled in the photos. Her fiancé raised a toast and called me the luckiest man in the room. The air smelled like wine and roses and freshly lit deceit. They thought it was over, that I had swallowed the hook and wouldn't tug on the line. But I was done swallowing. Back home that night, Carol changed in the bathroom while I sat on the edge of the bed, suit jacket folded beside me, phone in hand. I didn't play the recording again. I didn't need to. Their words were etched behind my eyes now, burned in like truth branded into flesh. I opened the file folder on the dresser. Bills, contracts, insurance documents. I flipped through each one, slowly. Then I found it. A form labeled Power of Attorney Authorization. My name. My signature. Dated 6 months ago. I didn't remember signing it. But I remembered that night. Lasagna on the table, Carol pouring wine, handing me papers between bites, telling me it was for health insurance updates. She pointed where to sign. I trusted her. I always trusted her. That trust cost me legal control over everything with my name on it. My hands shook, just slightly. Not with fear. With clarity. A man only realizes the house is burning after the floor gives out beneath him. But the smoke had been there for months. I took the form, scanned it, emailed it to a lawyer I knew from my union days. Quiet man. Smart. Unflinching. I told him I needed it checked. Urgently. He called me back within the hour. It's legal, he said. Filed correctly. Witnessed. Notarized. My breath caught. And the signature? I asked. He paused. It's yours. Technically. but I can refer you to a forensic analyst if you want to challenge it. I wanted to. I needed to. But more than that, I wanted the whole picture. Not just a single thread. I wanted to know how deep the rot ran. Find everything, I told him. Everything she's done with my name. Over the next few days, I became someone else. A man in the walls of his own life. Watching, listening, recording every flicker of behavior. Carol's sudden fondness. Her new affection. The way she touched my hand when asking about account numbers. The way Savannah suddenly called me David instead of he. They knew. They knew I'd heard. Or they suspected. And the guilt made them clumsy. I started keeping a notebook. Every date. Every strange charge. Every new account. A transaction for a consulting firm tied to Savannah's fiancé. A credit card opened in my name but billed to AP. Oh. Box across town. A wire transfer flagged by the bank. Then manually approved by someone using my digital signature. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. Each lie slotting into place. The family I thought I'd built, no, the family I bought was nothing but a machine. And I was the engine. Savannah, the mouthpiece. The critic. The one who made sure I never forgot I wasn't blood. She used to joke that I came with the house. Like a bad appliance her mother couldn't afford to replace. But now I saw the pattern. Her cruelty wasn't random. It was insulation. Distance. If I was a stranger, she didn't owe me anything. And Carol had made herself into an expert at smiling while siphoning. Every check she cashed, every bill I paid, every favor done quietly in the background while she played the patient caretaker. I'd been funding their lives for 3 years. Weddings, vacations, a new car under Savannah's name, purchased with a line of credit I didn't know existed. But they'd made one mistake. They let me hear the truth. Once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Once the veil lifts, the whole world tilts. I started recording everything. Conversations. Passwords typed. Calls made from the kitchen when she thought I wasn't listening. I installed security software on my home network. I tracked every device. I traced every login. She had access to everything. But she hadn't counted on me looking back. One night, while Carol was asleep, I checked the guest Wi-Fi log. Her laptop had synced with a printer at Savannah's house. 2 days before the wedding. I accessed the print history remotely. Legal documents, banking forms, authorization requests, all prepared. All before the wedding. It wasn't a betrayal. It was a plan. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark for a long time, listening to her breathe beside me. The woman I'd sworn to protect, to provide for, to share the rest of my life with. She shifted in her sleep, reached for me. Her hand touched my arm. I didn't move. That was the moment I stopped being her husband. I was no longer the man in the house. I was the man beneath it, quiet, calculating, pulling wires from the foundation one by one. Savannah's fiancé made a mistake, too. He filed a loan application using my social security number. A lazy move. He thought the wedding had sealed the deal. Thought I was asleep at the wheel. But I had a forensic financial specialist by then. Pitbull in a suit. She flagged it in under 48 hours. We kept digging. And every night, I sat at the kitchen table with my scotch and my silence. Carol would ask what was wrong. I'd smile. Say work stress. Old injuries acting up. She didn't press. She never pressed when she thought the money was safe. But Savannah kept watching me. Her glances grew longer. Her tone more cautious. Like an animal sensing the fence might be electric after all. One evening, while Carol was out shopping, Savannah showed up unannounced. Came to the back door. No smile. No greeting. She stepped inside and looked me dead in the eye. "What do you want?" she asked. I said nothing. She leaned in. "You heard us, didn't you? In the fitting room." I didn't blink. Didn't answer. Her voice dropped. "You're not going to ruin this. You hear me?" I finally spoke. "You already did." She paled. Backed up. Left without another word. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. That night, Carol cooked dinner. Set the table with candles. Played old jazz records she knew I liked. I smiled, ate everything, kissed her cheek. Because sometimes a man lets the house burn. But not before sealing the doors from the inside. And not before making sure the match was theirs. You never forget the moment you stop doubting your own paranoia. Mine came quietly. A Tuesday. Overcast. Carol was humming in the kitchen. I was standing in the hallway with a manila envelope in my hands, fingers trembling not from age but from confirmation. My lawyer had sent the results that morning. Forensic analysis complete. The signature on the power of attorney form was mine. But the ink, the pressure patterns, the angle, forged. I stared at the page for a long time, not because I doubted the result, but because I remembered the night she handed it to me. I'd been tired, full from dinner. She smiled, said it was an update to the emergency contact forms. She'd flagged the spaces. I signed. I trusted. Trust. That was the real crime scene. I called the financial specialist that afternoon. She had a voice like a closing vault, measured, final. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. Just confirmed what I'd already begun to suspect. Over $82,000 rerouted from my pension account. Several accounts opened under my name. A credit card maxed out in 2 weeks with charges tied to a boutique interior design company. Savannah's side business. A family planning account with monthly withdrawals linked to a fertility clinic. Carol and I were past that phase. But Savannah? She and her fiancé had been trying. All of it under my name. All of it enabled by a forged signature. You can fight this, the analyst said. You have a strong case. I nodded. But in my gut, I knew I wasn't interested in fighting. I was interested in exposing. That week, Carol announced she'd been promoted to executive director at her nonprofit, a charity that boasted ethics, transparency, community empowerment. She asked me to attend the banquet in her honor. I said yes. Of course I said yes, because the banquet would have a podium, a microphone, a captive audience, and I had a recording. The night of the event I dressed simple. No tux, no tie, just a plain black jacket, pressed slacks, and the same shoes I wore to my father's funeral. The venue was opulent, floor-to-ceiling windows, champagne towers, hors d'oeuvres passed on silver trays. Carol moved through the crowd like royalty, kisses on cheeks, firm handshakes, laughter just loud enough to be heard. She didn't introduce me to anyone. I sat at a back table, silent, invisible. The man behind the curtain, the wallet in the shadows. I watched her climb the steps to the stage. The applause was warm, respectful. She smiled, adjusted the mic, and began her speech. Words like integrity, compassion, accountability floated through the air like perfume. Then it happened. A man stood from the center table, one of the board members. Silver-haired, sharp suit. He held a folder in his hand. "I'm sorry," he said, cutting her off mid-sentence. "But before we go further, we've received documents that raise serious concerns." The room shifted. A low murmur rippled through the audience. Carol blinked. The smile held, but her posture changed, shoulders tightening, hands gripping the podium just a little too hard. The man turned. "David Hanley?" I stood. "Would you like to speak?" Every head turned toward me. I walked slowly to the stage, felt the weight of their eyes, the judgment, the curiosity, the beginnings of doubt. Carol's eyes were wide now, her mouth parted. "David, what are you doing?" I raised a hand. Calm, firm. "I've been in the back long enough," I said, stepping to the mic. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen. The recording played. First, my own voice, muffled slightly by the fitting room walls. Then Carol's. "He's just dead weight. I'm tired of pretending." Gasped. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Then Savannah. "He's not even family. I don't get why she's dragging him along." And finally, the fiancé. "Relax. He won't do anything." I let the silence hang after that. I watched it land. Watched the audience digest the hypocrisy, the cruelty, the plan behind the marriage. Carol tried to speak. "That's taken out of context." I raised the phone again, played the second clip. Is David still locked up? We don't need him crashing this. It was her voice again. Clear, cold, calculated. I'm not here to ruin anyone's night, I said, finally turning to face her. Just to tell the truth. My accounts were drained. My identity exploited. My trust obliterated. And it wasn't by strangers. I scanned the room, found every eye, held their gaze. It was by the woman I married. Carol's mask cracked. She reached for the mic, but the board member blocked her gently. That's enough, he said. We'll take it from here. I walked off the stage, walked out of the banquet, left the building. I didn't look back. Not once. 3 days later, Carol was placed on administrative leave. 2 weeks after that, she was terminated. The financial specialist filed charges on my behalf. Fraud, identity theft, forgery. The lawyer sent letters. The courts began to circle. The phone calls started next. Voicemails from Carol, pleading at first, then angry, then desperate. I didn't return a single one. Savannah texted once. You ruined everything. I didn't reply. I archived it, saved it, filed it under truths finally spoken. I moved into a small rental outside town. Just me and a mattress on the floor, a folding chair, a second-hand coffee maker. Peace. The banks reversed most of the charges. My pension was restored. The fraudulent accounts were flagged and closed. I was advised to change passwords, secure my credit, notify every institution I'd ever touched. I did it all, methodically, quietly, like a man rebuilding after a fire he didn't set. One afternoon, as I left the courthouse, I saw Carol in the parking lot. She didn't approach, just stood beside her car, eyes on me. Her face was tired, hollow, unpainted. The mask was gone. She didn't speak. Neither did I. Some betrayals are too large for language. I got in my truck and drove away. No music, no fanfare, just the hum of the engine and the faint smell of old oil and freedom. Back at the rental, I sat on the porch with a beer and the setting sun. A car pulled into the diner lot next door. Ellie, from another life. She saw me, smiled, walked over. No small talk, no questions. She just looked at me and said, "You finally look like yourself again." I didn't answer. I just nodded. Because she was right. There is a specific kind of silence that follows the collapse of a lie. Not the peaceful silence people romanticize, but a stillness so sharp it hums. It was in my bones now. In every cup of black coffee I sipped alone. In the echo of the empty rental, where my footsteps sounded louder than they should have. In the mirror where I no longer saw a husband, a stepfather, or a fool, but something closer to a man again. The aftermath came quietly. No screaming matches. No dramatic confrontations. No apologies. Carol didn't contest the divorce. My lawyer called me one morning, voice clipped and efficient. Signed. Filed. Final. That was it. 36 months of shared dinners, quiet walks, and split groceries, reduced to 10 minutes in a county clerk's inbox. She kept the house. I didn't argue. Let her sit inside the cage she built. What mattered was mine again. My name. My accounts. My body bruised but still standing. My time. What no one tells you is that when you stop being used, you also stop being needed. And the void that leaves can feel like grief, even when it's relief. I had spent years tethered to a machine of quiet extraction. Every morning, my purpose was to be the man they could lean on, ignore, and quietly rob. Without that role, who was I? The days passed. I built new habits. Woke at 5. Ran the perimeter of the dusty lot behind the rental. Ate breakfast standing up. No news. No television. No noise I didn't choose. I learned to like the quiet again. One day, I walked into the old hardware store off 183. The man behind the counter squinted at me. "Didn't you used to come in here with that woman? The one with the daughter who drove the Audi?" I just smiled. "Used to," I said, and left it at that. News traveled, as it always does in towns like ours. Some looked at me with pity, some with surprise. But the worst were the ones who nodded with that slow recognition. The look of men who'd seen their own bank accounts bleed into hands that never offered thanks. They never said it out loud, but I saw it in their faces. Me too. Savannah tried once. An email. Blank subject line. Just a single paragraph. I know you hate us, but my mother is not okay. She's not eating. She's not leaving the house. You could at least check in. You used to care about her. I read it twice. Then I moved it to trash. Because yes, I used to care. I used to believe in things like redemption, in showing up even after the wound. But caring for someone who used your love as camouflage for theft is like watering a grave and expecting it to bloom. They had made their choices. I was just letting them live in the world they built. Carol called once. Unknown number. I answered by instinct. Didn't speak. She said my name like it hurt her throat. David. Silence. I just wanted to. I hung up. I wasn't unkind. Just finished. I didn't need to hear her justifications. I'd heard the truth in the fitting room. Everything else was just noise. A few weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. David, I know you'll probably tear this up. I wouldn't blame you. I just wanted to say, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. And I broke it. Not because I didn't love you. Because I didn't know how to be loved without taking more than I gave. That's not an excuse. It's just the only truth I have left. Carol. I folded the letter. Burned it in the sink. Let ashes speak for themselves. The world kept turning. People still smiled in grocery stores. Dogs barked in yards. The sun didn't pause just because a marriage fell apart. But I had changed. One night, I sat at the diner off Route 183, corner booth. Same waitress who'd served me coffee since I was 30. She smiled, poured, didn't ask questions. Good people know when not to speak. Then the bell above the door chimed. Ellie. I hadn't seen her in years. A life ago, she'd been the one I let slip away, not out of cruelty, but timing. We were different people then. I had responsibilities. She had dreams in other states. Sometimes life doesn't fall apart. It just quietly unfolds in separate directions. But there she was. Same eyes. Same quiet strength in the way she walked. She saw me, paused, then smiled. Walked to my booth. Mind if I sit? I shook my head. She didn't ask what happened. Didn't need to. She looked at me like she was seeing a man freshly dug from the wreckage. Not polished. Not whole. But real. You finally look like yourself again, she said. It hit harder than it should have. Not because it was sentimental. Because it was true. I didn't tell her everything. Just enough. About Carol. The forgery. The wedding. The lies. The silence I'd lived in. Surrounded by people who looked at me like a walking ATM with a heartbeat. Ellie listened. Then she asked the one question no one else had. Do you feel free? I looked at the window. The world outside was dim and dusted with neon. I don't know, I said. I feel quiet. She nodded. Quiet is a good start. We sat for hours. Talked about things that had nothing to do with betrayal. Nothing to do with families that never accepted me. Just music. The weather. The taste of pecan pie when it's made from scratch. Normal things. Clean things. After she left, I walked home. The air was sharp, honest. I liked it that way. Weeks turned to months. Life settled into a rhythm. I didn't chase meaning. I didn't try to rebuild what had been demolished. Some ruins are better left untouched. The final notice from the court arrived. Case closed. Carol's appeal rejected. All charges settled. Her signature was ruled forged. But no jail time, just restitution. She paid it. Quietly. Through her lawyer. Blood money. I donated it to a charity she used to claim to support. Let her money finally do something honest. I kept the receipt. Sometimes at night, I still hear the voices from the fitting room. That moment when the veil was lifted. When everything I'd built, every brick, every smile, every late-night compromise, was reduced to a sentence. He's not even family. No, I wasn't. I was the man who paid for the wedding no one wanted me to attend. The man who bought the dress she wore while mocking my name. The man who signed his own erasure and handed it over with a smile. But not anymore. Now I am just a man. Alone. Free. Unapologetic. No longer a husband. No longer a stepfather. No longer a fool. And I sleep better this way. No one waiting for a password. No one planning behind a locked door. Just me. My name. My silence. And you, reading this, may be wondering if I was cruel. If I should have forgiven her. If I should have fought to preserve what little was left. So let me ask you, if someone locks you in a room and calls you dead weight, do you wait to be let out? Or do you burn the house down from the inside? You tell me, would you have endured it? Or would you have done what I did? Walked away with your name, your spine, and finally your dignity?